Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully you can hear us okay and the screen share, see the screen share as we're presenting a PowerPoint presentation coinciding our guest speakers today. First, I just want to thank you so much for joining us here today and taking the time as we're extremely excited to present on underpaid lodging taxes and specifically how local governments can maximize the occupancy tax in your jurisdiction. We'll begin the discussion today with a recent case study overview and then followed by specific recommendations and steps taken to help maximize this important revenue stream. We'll have a chat and question and answer period briefly at the end following our 30 to 35-minute presentation. My name is Brennan Middleton, Marketing Manager here at Avenu Insights and Analytics, and I'll be your host and moderator here today. Next, I'd like to introduce to you our speakers and presenters for our discussion. First, one of our longtime partners and valued customers, Edmundo Calderon. Edmundo brings over 29 years of experience as an auditor across diverse industries, including financial services, higher education, and local government. He currently serves as the Chief Internal Auditor for the City of El Paso, Texas. Next, our own Avenu Client Services Manager, Ted Camel. Ted comes to us with over 20 years of local government experience in compliance auditing and revenue administration. And for the past 13 years, Ted has been a leading partner to hundreds of municipalities in the Southeast region, helping them maximize and recover millions of dollars in tax revenue. So, who is Avenu? While processing over $1.3 billion annually, Avenu provides revenue enhancement and administrative solutions to cities and counties nationwide. We focus specifically on helping you find, recover, and manage your revenue base through the enhancement and collection of taxes and fees. Our data-driven analytic tools help provide the insight and clarity needed to reduce budgetary risk while also providing an interactive way of visualizing your current and trending tax revenues. So today's agenda. As we previously mentioned, we'll hear the story of how El Paso, Texas increased compliance and collected millions of dollars in recovered occupancy tax revenue. Followed will be specific recommendations and steps taken to help maximize this important revenue stream, as we'll discuss ordinance adoptions, specific administrative programs, reporting and analytics execution used to provide efficiency, along with a discussion on the actual audit process. Following the presentation, we'll have a short question and answer period, as I've already mentioned. So please, you can submit these questions via the chat feature here in WebEx or through the email address labeled here, succeed@avenuinsights.com, and we'll be sure to answer those questions towards the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Edmundo Calderon.
Good morning, everybody. As they introduced me, Edmundo Calderon, I'm the Chief Internal Auditor for the City of El Paso. A little bit of explanation of my audit universe here in El Paso. See, we got a population of about 683,000 people in El Paso proper. The surrounding areas with the little suburbs and little communities around us, we're about almost at 1 million people. So with that, I have 9 auditors on staff. I have a $900 million annual budget, which covers all 30 departments, about 30 some odd departments within the city of El Paso. In addition to that, anywhere from 6,000 to 6,500 employees, and specific to this presentation, 108 hotels. What we do in my shop, we actually cover everything from A to Z, from the airport to the zoo and all points in between. Now, here in El Paso, what we were doing before, we were actually doing our own hotel audits. It's something I began about 8 years ago. And we actually learned the process of auditing hotels. But based because of everything I told you about our audit universe, we were doing maybe 1 or 2 hotels a year. Based on that analysis, it was going to take us anywhere from 50 to 100 years just to audit each hotel here in El Paso at least once. So I had to come up with a solution on how I could increase capacity and get more hotel audits done. And that's when I came across Avenu. And since we signed on with Avenu and got a contract with them, we're able now, we have a system now in place. We've kind of worked on it where we're actually auditing 20 hotels or more a year, but we're averaging about 20 hotels a year. So that gives me the capacity of auditing every hotel at least once every 5 years. So a vast improvement in our capacity. Here on this slide, I'd like to kind of emphasize what we've been doing with Avenue. The city needed more than just audit capacity to ensure integrity of the entire revenue management process. And that what I mean by that is on our collection side. So in addition to signing on with Avenue for audit work, we also have signed on with them for administrative work. By administrative work, they help us in the collection, the day-to-day collection of the hotels when we collect the hot tax from them and get it deposited into city accounts. So they've been very instrumental in helping us with that. In addition, with the administration and the audit, it gives us full compliance with what we're doing. And then finally, in the darker blue square you see there, we get reporting and analysis. And that really has been the most important feature, I think, of this entire process. Yes, I'm getting collections done. Yes, I'm getting audit work done. But more important, now I have data, which is invaluable in my world. So with the Avenue auditing process, we have audits training. They help us out with training the hotels when they're on site. They help us with recovery of past-due revenue. They assist us. They help us, like I said, with the collections, and then, of course, the backup support. That is just an immense improvement in our process. Finally, here I wanted to give you some analysis of what's happened the last couple of years here on this slide. As you can see over on the far right of the slide, in 2016, we actually did 20 audits, and we were able to, based on the findings, identify a little over $65,000 in additional hot tax, which kind of helped pays for the contract itself. I mean, it's just great. I mean, it just helps us out there. 2017, we got a little bit more aggressive. I had a city council that wanted to get a little bit more aggressive with the process, so we did 30 hotels. That 30 hotels generated a little more than $150,000 in additional hot tax, in addition to what we already were collecting. So as you can see, we already got a couple of win-wins here on this analysis. Finally, on this slide, of course, with the good, sometimes you get the bad. During that analysis, where I was trying to emphasize on the data that we were getting, when we were looking at that data, we were seeing 3 hotels, specifically here, there were 3 hotels. They were owned by the same realty management company. They were managing the same 3 hotels, and we started seeing a pattern where they were running past due. And as every quarter would pass, we would see that that past due amount increase and increase until finally, as you can see, it ended up being over $1.5 million. Avenue was very, very cooperative with us, and I mean, they helped us tremendously. The city, we have a separate process for collections when we get to this level. Of course, it involves the lawyers, but we had to provide hardcore data to be able to proceed with that kind of activity. Avenue was very instrumental with helping us getting data from the state and from the city's numbers, and we were able to proceed and attempt to collect this amount due to the city of El Paso in late hot tax.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Edmundo. That was very, very valuable hearing it from your perspective. So we move into the next part of our presentation today on elaborating on the effective program to maximize your occupancy tax. So welcome, Ted Camel.
Hi, and thank y'all for joining us here today. I'm Ted Camel. I've been with the company for 13 years. I've audited hotels and helped cities wrap their arms around their overall hotel tax program. And I think that's one thing that distinguishes our company from an accounting firm that might come in and do audits and charge an hourly rate. The key emphasis here is an overall HOT program that helps the city long-term build a compliance ethic with the entire lodging community. So it goes far more than just doing audits. But having said that, part of the audits that we do, we're very unique in that the fact that our audit team only audits hotels for cities. There's no conflict of interest. We don't audit for businesses or private firms. We're strictly auditing for governmental entities around the country. But we also have a team that exclusively does nothing but audit hotels, so they understand the language of the hotel community. We talk their talk. We understand all the issues that surround that particular industry that drives your tourism budget for your cities. The main thing is to maximize your city's occupancy tax, and there's 4 key areas that deal with an overall program. There's your ordinance and the tax return, full tax administration, whether the city does it internally or whether they ask us to do it. And actually, most of my clients in Texas now include tax administration, the actual on-site property audits, and of course, the big issue now for a lot of communities around the country is tax discovery with the growth of the short-term rental industry where people are renting out their homes, condos, and apartments. Cities want that tax revenue as well. On the first part, part of what we do is we help cities by looking at your ordinance and making sure that it's up to date, that it complies with any statutory changes that might have been made in your state, certainly strengthening that ordinance, especially when it comes to short-term rentals, making sure that you maximize your HOT revenue, including the areas of penalties and interest and those types of things. Some ordinances were written decades ago and they need to be updated. We'll look at your ordinance. We'll make recommendations. I just did one yesterday for a city in West Texas and made some pretty positive recommendations for them. And then we'll also look at your tax return. We've actually had cities that, the tax return is very basic. How much revenue is taxable and how much do you owe us? There's a lot of information that you can capture on that tax return that helps the city understand what's going on besides just the taxes that are owed. For instance, the exempt rent. What type of exempt rent? How many rooms were available at your hotel during that month? That might explain why your revenue has decreased month over the last year. What was your room revenue per room? That's a key item for cities to understand. How much are they, what's driving those dollars that drives your HOT tax? We'll also make recommendations whether you file monthly or file quarterly and other issues that help that overall tax return provide information to your city. On hotel tax administration, the reason why a lot of cities we started doing administration in 2012, because it goes hand in hand with the hotel audits that we do. Here you have the hotel audit company actually administering the tax, is that we're providing a service far beyond just collecting the tax from the hotels and remitting it to the city. And cities have asked us to do this because anyone can collect the tax, but it's taking those dollars and putting them in a format where the cities can understand the reports. As Edmundo explained, the reports that we provide to the city and the analysis. So we're not just taking those dollars and depositing those into your account the next business day. We're providing the city some very, very powerful online reports, reconciliation reports, late payment reports. The historical reports are very important. We track that for the city. We do all of that 24/7. And what's important, because a lot of cities have concerns, because when they hire outside companies, is that there's absolutely no work on behalf of any city staff when it comes to our hotel tax administration. There's no software to download. There's no internal training. The only thing that the city is involved with is checking off and advice and consent on the forms, and everything that we do is we kick off the program. We track changes of ownership. We help communicate with your hotels on any issue relating to the payment of the tax, exempt rent issues, all of those things we do 24/7. The only time that the city would become involved in this part of our program is if the property becomes so deficient in their tax payments that we need to ask you to get your legal department involved for action and consultation. And we certainly work with you on that as well. But this is a turnkey program. The other side of this, as we continue our discussions after this webinar, is that our HOT administration program is so affordable that's why most cities say go with it. It's extremely affordable. We couldn't do this internally for what we pay Avenue to do this for us. On property audits, we do on-site field audits. We're not doing the audits in an office hundreds or thousands of miles away. Most importantly, those field audits, we get on-site. When I say audits, really don't do justice to the word, because half of what we're doing is training the staff. You're going to realize revenue between 13 and 15% increase because we're visiting with your managers and your owners of your properties to ensure that they are complying. We're building that ethic. So going forward, you're going to see a bump of your HOT revenue. Now, the bonus could be is if there are issues, if there are errors in reporting, if there are exempt rent errors, we will identify that, usually going back 4 years of looking at the records. We compare it to your state returns. We do all the analysis. Again, there's no work on behalf of city staff at all, other than checking off on the letters that we send out to your hotels and the kickoff that we do in advance of our audits. We provide your hotels 30 to 40 days advance notice. We give them plenty of time to prepare for the audits, to get the records, so we don't show up and there's a big surprise. The whole idea is to make the audit process seamless and very friendly to your business partners. We are representing your city. We're not going to go and beat your hotels over the head. We don't do contingency fee audits because we don't want your hotels to feel that we're there to look for money. No, we're there to look for full compliance. And if there are issues, we're going to write up our report, build a fence around it nice and tight, have the backup support for you, provide you with a full audit report, including the letters that will be mailed out to the hotels, either giving them a gold star or explaining to them in the letter what they owe and a due date to make payment arrangements with the city. And then we provide full backup support to the city in the event you might have a hotel or two that wants to push back on the audit. We're there to help you up into including going to court if that needs to ever happen. In the 13 years I've been with the company, it's only happened about 3 times. The city has won on all 3 cases because our audit reports and our audit procedures are pretty turnkey. We have a great success rate. Okay. What do we look for when we do the audits? We're going to look at everything that we need to look at relevant to that particular property. Guest folios, bank statements, exemption certificates, the franchise reports. Unfortunately, I've done hotel audits where the franchise report, the gross revenue, seems to be different than what's reported on the tax return. Well, I have to report that. We're not there we're there to do the math. We're doing the accounting, and we're not there to again beat anyone over the head. And when we find errors like that, we do have to validate that, make copies, and provide that in the audit report. If we have to, we even look at housekeeping reports. I've even learned how to look at the water bills and determine how much water is used per room, and that helps me get a good understanding of how much rent is being generated per room versus what they're reporting to the city. So we're looking at all the issues relating to that, but then on the other side of it is we're not going to spend so much time on looking at records that are irrelevant to that particular audit. Different hotels have different issues. What we do 30 to 40 days before that audit is that we have a good understanding of what we need to look at when we go to that hotel, so our audits are done efficiently. We're not going to waste that hotel property manager's time by spending days on end doing work that doesn't need to be done. And that keeps our audit costs down to the city. We're able to efficiently go in, and like in El Paso, we can go in and do 20 audits in 1 week and come out very successful. And so that's basically our process for the audits. Now on discovery, and discovery is an area for our company that has grown in the last 4 to 5 years because, again, short-term rental issues, especially with some of our bigger clients, is an issue that's not going away. And we actually have clients like South Padre Island where when we started with them back in 2013, we do full administration and audits for South Padre. And we had roughly 330 accounts at the time. They're now close to 700 accounts because we have worked with the city and their chamber to identify absentee owners of condos and different types of rental units that they were never registered with the city, so therefore they were never paying any hotel tax. We do whatever we have to do within our limits to discover those properties. We will make contact with them. The city is always in the loop, so they know who we're contacting. We ask for voluntary compliance. If we can get them to voluntarily help us determine the back taxes that are owed, we will do that. We do have some cities that ask us just get them signed up and paying forward. Don't worry about the back taxes. We'll work with whatever the city wants us to do in this area. We'll do that. We also help the city, if you want, I've actually made suggestions to cities to adopt what some cities are doing now, is they're actually creating a short-term rental ordinance that actually goes hand in hand with your HOT ordinance. And the short-term rental ordinance deals with some issues I'll talk about in a minute. But this is a new area of interest to cities. And of course, your hotel lodging community, they want those folks paying taxes like they are and complying per your city ordinance. Okay, and the discovery issue, again, we're helping you discover. Now, we'll look at all different types of websites. We actually purchase data that helps us locate these folks that should be paying. We often get contacts from your city that will let us know because when you're building a compliance ethic in your community, like in South Padre, someone who owns a condo is going to call the city and go, here's a list of folks we found on a website not registered with the city. So a lot of times your eyes and ears are going to be those folks within your doing it right, and that's going to help tremendously. And then there's also the area, like I was talking about, the short-term rental ordinance area, and in the second blue box to your right, deals with zoning concerns. Some cities are concerned about, yes, we do want that home in, let's say, College Station. They want to rent their home out during the football weekends. But should they get a special use permit? Should we inspect the home relating to parking, health and safety issues, especially like fire safety? Are there smoke alarms? Is there protection from small children in the swimming pool area? Those types of issues. And especially with a short-term special use permit, as you know, is usually for a period of around 2 years. You could always review the permit, making sure that there's no complaints from neighbors, and you could also rescind that permit and not allow them to rent again. So there's some cities that are doing that. We certainly help. We provide the consultation on helping you draft that ordinance if you feel that's an issue. The overall program is to help enhance your revenue. You use your hotel tax dollars for areas that help bring in folks that visit your city. Not only helps drive HOT taxes, but as you know, when they stay for a weekend, whether it's a special event, a sporting event, or for whatever reason, they're also in the shops or in the restaurants. That drives your sales tax revenue. And as you know, folks that are visiting your city short term, they're not putting necessarily a huge strain on city services. So when you bring in additional sales tax revenue, that's a bonus for your city coffers for services for the folks that live in the city 24/7, for other vital services like police and fire protection, street services, and those types of things. So the overall thing is to help you discover the dollars that you deserve, make sure that you are getting the dollars that you should be getting by building a strong compliance ethic. And the cost savings to you is it's no increased demands on your city staff. We have hundreds of references where we have been in cities for many, many years. My hometown of Tyler, Texas, where I'm speaking from you now, they've been using our services since 2006. They will attest that it's been an absolute easy process. There's nothing that the city has to do other than approve the audits that we do. They get the reports. We answer any questions. We help them register folks at bed and breakfasts and those types of things. We do all that for the city. And then lastly, the lodging community respects us. I went into a major city last year to do their kickoff, and a hotel owner asked me, "What took you so long?" Well, he has relatives and friends in other cities that have been with our company for years, and they like working with us. Now, maybe they did not necessarily like the fact that we had to write them up on some past taxes, but they understood why, and they liked the fact that we were going to work with them on a payment plan with the city to get those paid. But we're there to help them. We have hotels that call us every day and ask us questions. Many of these hotels around Texas have known me personally so long they have my cell phone number. And we're there as your business partner, and I think that's important for the image of your city and building that compliance and respect within your lodging community.
Fantastic, Ted and Linda, thank you. We're gonna move right into the question and answer period. I know that we have some questions that are coming in through the chat features along with the email submission here, but the first one was a two-part question, Ted or Edmundo. It kind of tees up from what you just referred to, Ted, but let's go ahead and answer it. It says, how do the hotels feel when Avenue comes in? And then secondly, what are the reaction of the taxpayers?
Well, and this is part of the process. Again, we're not an accounting firm that just comes in blindly and said we're going to audit your hotels. When we kick off with the city, and like I've got two cities in South Texas, very South Texas, that just signed up. We did their kickoff meetings yesterday with the city. We explained the process. We're going to communicate with all the properties well in advance. I mean, they're doing administration and audits. So the first thing we do is kick off the administration. We're not just going to throw this on the property owners and the managers of these hotels. We're giving them 35 to 40 days, plenty of written material, phone calls, communication, and then we actually go down there. I'll actually go down there and actually do a kickoff where we visit with those that will come in during like a 2-hour kickoff session in the morning, where I can show them how to. One of the features that we do is we allow online file and pay, which the cities love. Most cities don't offer that right now for hotel taxes. The hotels love it because right now, all of them in Texas, they have to file online with the state. So having that feature, they love online file, and they actually pay their taxes early because they can bank those taxes and have the due date set at the 20th or the 25th, or sometimes they'll just pay it on the 1st of every month. So they enjoy the fact that this is what we do, and they also understand that this is what we do full time. So we usually have very good response. Now you could get a hotel that is 6 months behind, or they've had a lot of issues paying. Maybe they don't necessarily like the audit process, but again, we're just doing the math for the city. We don't get into any local politics or any of those issues. And I think that's another positive part about it, is it takes that you have a third party audit team that we're just sitting there, we're simply doing the math, and I think they respect that.
Excellent. Okay. Next one that came in, it asked for a little bit further elaboration on the short-term rental piece, but it says, does Avenue perform audits on owners of short-term rental properties and who may be either delinquent or underpaying hotel taxes?
The answer is absolutely yes. And you know, the key thing, first of all, is to get them registered so they're paying going forward. We ask for voluntary compliance, and if they can voluntarily comply and provide us the records, and you know, and a lot of times these folks are paying the state taxes because they certainly don't want the comptroller coming after them, and they figured, well, the city, you know, we can not pay the city, and they'll never know. So those state returns are certainly there for us to look at. If we can get them to voluntarily comply, that makes the process so much easier. We've had to pull the trigger a few times and actually do a complete audit because we weren't getting their cooperation. But you know, under statute, you're allowed to audit if they're renting overnight. You know, they must comply with state law and your local ordinance, and the city has the ability to audit. And like in the state of Texas, if you're 2 quarters or more behind, you can actually assess the audit costs to that property owner. So you do have that ability to audit short-term rentals. In fact, I mean, we do that all the time. That's part of what we do.
Awesome. This one was for Edmundo. It says, thank you, Edmundo, for doing this. This is very valuable information. But it says, how did you determine who to audit when Avenue came in?
Okay, that's a good question. We actually conduct the detailed risk assessment here in my office. We look at several factors. When was the last time they were audited, if they're past due, if they're current, if there's been any issues in the past, like a bounced check. You know, so we factor all those little elements into an analysis, and we decide who's going to be audited, and then we communicate that information to Avenue and to their auditors, and then they set up the schedule with the hotel when they're going to show up.
And I will say, most of the cities, we'll do before we do the audits, we'll do an analysis of all of your hotels, and our audit manager will make a recommendation. Most of the time, the cities want us to make a recommendation of like each audit cycle, you know, which hotels to audit. And then there are some cities like El Paso, they want to make that decision because they have a pretty good audit team already in place, and we'll just follow their recommendations year to year. But in the end, it's with the advice and the consent of the city on which hotels to audit and how many hotels to audit each year. We audit with cities with as few as 2 hotels or 6 hotels or 50 or 100 hotels. And there are sometimes I've had a lot of clients, maybe a dozen clients last year, but we've already audited all 6 or 10 of their hotels over 2 to 3 years. Under our contracts, what's beneficial to the cities, you can actually take a year off. We're doing the administration for you. We're watching the numbers. There's no sense in you spending money on audits just to be doing the audits. So we don't want you spinning the wheels just spending money on audits. And we'll make a suggestion, take a year or 2 off. They're all doing it correctly, and we're still watching because we're doing the administration for you.
Okay. This next one says, can you elaborate a little bit further on the on-site training that you mentioned towards the beginning of the presentation? Absolutely. Very good question. We provide written, we don't just speak, we're going to leave them with a lot of written material that explains in detail how to handle different types of exemptions, whether it's a school, a church, federal employees, military,
a lot of the errors that we discover deal with long-term exemptions, 30 days or more. How is that handled? How to make sure that those taxes are handled properly. And just on that exempt rent issue, a lot of training has to be done because there's a whole host of problems that surround long-term exempt. I could get into detail with you off the webinar, but there are many different, it's not just cut and dry. And then you have hotels that will charge a weekly rate that includes the tax. Are they still charging that weekly rate after 30 days? Because if they are, they're still collecting the tax, but they're claiming that guest is tax exempt. That's a big issue in and of itself. So, and then we're helping them understand issues relating to due dates and how to help them make arrangements so their payment is being turned in on time if that's an issue for that hotel. But the training is an important part of it, and that's why it's so very important that we actually visit these hotels. We have some hotels, you know, the large branded Marriotts that have corporate offices hundreds of miles away. All those records might be off-site. They might send us a lot of what we need after the audit or before the audit for us to do in our offices, but still part of that audit process must occur on-site, especially because of this training and the communication. We want to establish a line of communication with your managers of your properties so going forward, they know who to contact when they have questions.
Fantastic. We've got time for a couple more here. Another one that come through says, is your fee an allowable expense from HOT funds? Okay, well, I will honestly say that most of the cities that we have in Texas are paying for the audits out of HOT funds because they see that as an administration expense, which in the statute it mentions that as an allowable use. It's not our job to make that recommendation for the city. That's something that the city determines internally between their legal department and their finance department. Then we have some cities that will pay for the audits out of the general revenue fund. There is clear language in Texas statute now that makes it very clear that administration can be paid for out of HOT. So it's not a fuzzy issue. It's pretty clear you can. The audits is kind of like some cities do. Some cities pay for it out of general revenue. It's not something that we actually give advice on because that's a decision that y'all make internally.
I can tell you from the El Paso standpoint, we pay for the audit fees out of the general fund. We've taken that position. The administrative function we pay out of the hot tax, but the audit fees we pay out of the general fund.
Great. Next one says, how soon can you provide a proposal / pricing, and what would be the process for follow-up? I can say before he gets into specific technical around the proposal and pricing, we will be following up with you directly post the webinar today, as will the recording of today's webinar, and the PowerPoint slides will be available for redistribution amongst your internal teams. But I'll defer to Ted and Edmundo around the proposal and pricing.
Yeah, as soon as this webinar is over, I can start working with each city that is interested in a proposal, and I will work each city, depending on where you are, will have a client service manager that will work directly with you, and I will work with that client service manager through the entire process of proposal, kickoffs, whatever that manager needs to make sure that we can successfully get you going if you want to go in that direction.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we're running out of time here, getting close to around 15 minutes. There are some other questions that we will follow up with you directly that we didn't have time to get to today. But you can contact us directly at succeed@avenueinsights.com, or jot down that quick phone number right there that you can get a hold of us post-webinar today. Like I mentioned before, we will be providing a recording of today's webinar for download very shortly thereafter the presentation today. We'll also be providing a link to download the PowerPoint deck for you to review internally with your teams. Lastly, thank you so much for joining us today. We thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Hopefully it was some value, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.